Oh, yeah, I guess I do.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We're gonna start the panel. So welcome to the session. We are going to be talking about how to make AI more inclusive. Over 3 billion people do not have access to the internet, and this will inevitably result in users and losers of AI, both globally and nationally. Without good data from all of us, the internet will continue to reflect standard outdated views of who rules the world and who will keep new ideas at bay. This is likely to continue the current trend of the dominance of the global north in thought and economy, creating geopolitical issues around AI as well as furthering inequity. How can we move forward with inclusivity in AI? So let me do a quick introduction to our panelists, and I'll start with you, Kay. Kay Firth-Butterfield was, until recently, head of AI at the World Economic Forum. She is now CEO of Good Tech Advisory and board member of Earth Species Project. Kay has been leading the development of responsible AI since 2014. She's considered one of the world's foremost experts on AI and ethics. She was the world's first C-suite appointee in AI ethics, a contributor to the Asilomar Principles, vice chair of the IEEE Global Initiative for Ethically Aligned Design, and the inaugural head of AI and machine learning at the forum. As CEO of Good Tech Advisory, she advises and speaks to organizations and audiences around the world. Welcome, Kay. And to my immediate left, we have Janna Salokangas, who is co-founder of MIA. MIA's goal is to upskill 1 million women worldwide and unlock 100,000 jobs, accelerating the advancement of AI skills and driving inclusive innovation in the AI space. She's a founding partner of the Women of the Future book, shining a light on the top 100 women globally who are driving impact in the world through emerging technologies. Next, we have Olivier Oullier. He's a PhD, is a professor, neuroscientist, entrepreneur, and investor. He's the founder and CEO of Inclusive Brains, a company building AI's first neural foundation model to empower machines to adapt and serve everyone, regardless of their abilities. In 2023, with other young global leaders of the World Economic Forum, he founded the Assistive Tech and Artificial Intelligence for Inclusion Impact Initiative. He formerly worked as global head of strategy and healthcare and a member of the executive committee of the World Economic Forum. He also worked in various roles for the French government and as an expert to the European Union. And finally, we have Sneha Revanur, founder and president of Encode Justice. Sneha, Encode Justice is a youth movement for human-centered artificial intelligence. She was recently named the youngest individual named to Time's list of the 100 most influential voices in AI, and the youngest member of Mozilla's list of the 25 rising stars shaping our digital futures. She has personally advised national and international stakeholders such as Interpol and the European Commission and the US Department of Education, and she joins the World Economic Forum this year as part of the We Are Family Foundation's youth delegation. So with that, we're going to dive right into our panel questions. And Kay, we'll start with you. How is AI likely to impact the global South? Can there be inclusion with 3 billion people lacking internet access?
Yes, well, that's actually the question of this panel. And, you know, this is extremely worrying that when we look around Davos, everybody's saying, oh, we're building this with AI and that with AI. And yet we still have 3 billion people who are not connected. And you just need to set that number against the number of users of ChatGPT, which is put at 100 million. It's a very different, they're very different numbers. And so what we need to be thinking about is, A, how do we include the Global South? But B, do they want to be included? And one of my concerns, especially as a Brit, is that we don't want to recolonize the Global South with AI. We want to actually to ensure that we are developing anything that we do with the Global South actually with them. And they are doing the developing, they're doing the deciding of how much AI they want. But we can't do that with 3 billion people who are unconnected. We first we have to have those conversations with the connected, but we also need to bring online those 3 billion people. And it's a huge problem, both for the economy, for geopolitics, that we are traveling at very, very different paces and perhaps very different trajectories.
Thank you, Kay. Sneha, I'd like to turn to you now. Why is it important for AI development to respect the world's linguistic diversity, and how might unregulated AI contribute to cultural or linguistic erasure?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's important to see that one of the main challenges we're facing right now with scaling up AI adoption is this task of preserving linguistic diversity, because obviously large language models can only be as good as their training data. And for many languages around the world, we don't see the same availability of a corpus of training material as we see for major languages like English or Spanish or Mandarin. And the issue with that is, as that trend continues, as lesser known and lesser documented languages and dialects continue to be excluded from these models, it'll end up fast tracking and reinforcing already ongoing erasure, because these are languages that in many cases are already vanishing, and we're already fighting to preserve them and keep them alive. And I fear that AI could be the next frontier of erasure for those sorts of languages. And so I think it's really important, as we're thinking about training AI models, and especially language models, to be conscious of having inclusive data sets and making sure that we are consciously including material from those lesser known and lesser documented languages from all around the world, and not just the dominant few, to really make sure that we are averting that risk and keeping and playing our part in keeping those languages alive. So I think that's going to be a critical task going forward.
Thank you, Sneha. Janna, so since this panel is about inclusion, how do you see the future of work evolving with the integration of AI?
Thank you. Such a great and a timely question, because we are living such a pivotal time. According to the World Economic Forum, 85% of the jobs that will exist in 2030 have not even been invented yet. So the future of work will look very different in 5 years. And those who can keep up with continuous learning and keep at the forefront of just innovating and communicating and learning these new skills and tools will be at the forefront in the future. And I think it's so interesting because we are all in the same line here. Nobody knows the skills yet. So there's a huge gap. Obviously, women, we are behind, but there's even a greater opportunity for women, because if we upskill ourselves now, we can be at the forefront of the AI revolution, because it's being created, and these future jobs are being created now. Also, another point, that 80% of the jobs that are at the risk that AI will take over are currently held by women, which are customer service, content creation tasks, and this that can be automized quite easily. So let's look at those tasks that we cannot automate, which are the human skills: empathy, leadership skills, communication skills. So these will be the most important skills of the future. We always say in Mission Impact Academy, the tech part is easy. You can learn the tech skills quite easily if you just want to, but let's put the focus on the human skills as well, and the aspects that AI can't ever take over, because those skills will be necessarily in the future of work.
Okay, thank you. Olivier, some say that ChatGPT is the most inclusive tech ever. Do you agree with that?
I would agree if you have electricity, if you have a computer, if you have infrastructure, if you have hands or a voice to use it. But there are lots of people who are excluded from using this fantastic tool. Let's look at it. It doesn't require any literacy. It does not require any education or skill whatsoever except to converse. But what we take for granted, there are lots of people on this planet, actually more than 50 million, that cannot speak, that cannot use their hands, that are locked in because of accidents in their lives or neurodegenerative diseases. First, these are part of the people who are also excluded, included in G7 countries. Second, of course, stating the obvious, but sometimes it's good to repeat and repeat what seems obvious because we tend to forget about it too quickly. No infrastructure, no electricity, no computers, no access to technology. You talk about the global south, absolutely, but not only there. So the problem is you can have the best technology in the world. You can have the best medicine in the world. Whatever you invent, if people can't use it, it's totally useless. And let's talk about usefulness, access. People talk about a Gen AI revolution. Seriously? For me, it's an evolution. The big revolution is the user interface. It's until Gen AI and ChatGPT, people had AI all over their phones and their lives, in their GPS, in their OS, in their browsers. But it was running backstage. You wouldn't realize it. What changed with ChatGPT is the ability and the possibility for people to be able to give orders to AI and to get something in return that was related more or less to the order they gave. Yet, one problem remains. It's a very, very basic interaction. I don't know about you, but the interactions I have with people all go both ways. Machines are not yet adaptive. We're still on a very basic stimulus or prompt response model. What we need now is machines that can only sense people, but adapt to people in real time in order to really serve and be of assistance. ChatGPT, Gen AI, AI in general, for me, is a fantastic assistive tool to enhance. Some people would say, to give superpowers. But at the end of the day, true inclusion means something that can be used by everyone. And to conclude, let me share something personal. I'm not the kind of guy who, as a kid, was dreaming about space, about being a movie star. My big dream is the remote control. You know why? The remote control was invented for people with disabilities, to give them access to something that we take for granted in most countries, TV. It totally changed the way they interacted with technology. And guess what? This piece of technology that was invented to help people with disability then reached the households of billions of people. And this is what I want to achieve with adaptive AI, adaptive brain-machine interfaces, is the fact that it will adapt to whomever you are. Should you have attention deficit disorders? Should you be okay with who you are? And should you miss a limb or be in locked-in syndrome? With the next generation of adaptive brain-machine interface will be truly inclusive, meaning serving everyone with zero discrimination whatsoever.
Well, thank you for bringing our attention to a huge group of people who are too often forgotten. Kay, I'd like to ask you about the training of large language models. You often talk about the problems with the training data. Can you expound on that, please?
Yeah, certainly. Well, one of them has just been mentioned. It's the lack of other languages and the problems there that arise therefrom. I was pleased yesterday when I was actually here on a panel with HPE that they were saying that they were working with the Indian government to actually create large language models for all the 27 different languages, for example, that were spoken in India. So that's one issue. I think another issue with the data is that it's mainly has been created over the thousands of years by the people who had the pen, and those people were white men. And so therefore the data of women and persons of color, wherever they hail from, is actually not correctly replicated in the data. And so what does that mean for our future society? Do we, if we continue using large language models and make them at the heart of our society, actually then continue with the politics that we have seen in the past? Where do women and persons of color have a say without that data embedded in generative AI? And then I think, you know, a third issue with the way that data is in LLMs is really around the fact that what we are doing is sort of relying upon the past. So, you know, when I sat as a judge, part of my job was to interpret statutes. And sometimes often that meant looking to the future and saying, how does this statute apply to our future? So, but if we're only ever looking at the past, because the data's in the past, we can't move forward. And that's I see as a huge problem for society.
Thank you. And that's a perfect segue to my next question, which is for Sneha. And so Kay has talked, well, all the panelists has really talked about how important it is that the AI we develop represents all of us. So why is it particularly necessary to include young people in the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much the work that I do. And there are so many reasons why I believe it's so important for young people to have a place in these conversations. I'm 19 years old. I come from a generation of digital natives. We have grown up in a world governed by algorithms, governed by the enormous power of social media platforms, the information that we consume, the media that we're exposed to, the people that we meet. All of this is being curated by algorithmic forces. And I think that's an experience that no other generation intimately understands in the same way that we do. So we might not approach these conversations with a PhD in computer science or a specific set of desirable credentials, but I think that we still have that lived experience and that intimate understanding of how algorithms are actually impacting us on the day-to-day basis. And so I think that is why young people should be involved in these conversations. And so through my work at Encode Justice, I am trying to bring that mission forward by taking youth to lawmakers to talk about AI issues, training youth to think more critically about the implications of AI through our workshop programs. And I think that we really need more intergenerational efforts like what we're doing at Encode Justice to really turn the tides here.
Thanks. So, Janna, let me turn to you, and let's talk about how Mia is trying to specifically include women in AI.
Yes, we were at this AI breakfast earlier this week, and why women are behind in AI, there was an interesting research by IBM, and it's not actually the fact that we would be worse in tech skills or any of these things, it's about confidence. We are not as confident as men. So I think this is Mia's secret thing, is we build confidence in non-technical women that we can learn, we can do, and I think I'm the best example. I'm the non-technical founder of an AI academy, and we can really learn these new skills, and this is what we are doing together with Mia. With 6 weeks programs, we have been able to validate these women's skills and confidence. So we believe in hands-on, interactive online. We do online learning, but really hands-on learning. So these women do graduate with an AI portfolio, and they can go back to their employees or get a new job, just like showing these are my AI skills. And we have been seeing promotions and some new jobs as well already. So within 6 weeks, we can truly validate these new skills. But at the end of the day, it's really about the confidence that these women are confident enough to showcase their skills and learn and go to their employees and say, hey, I do know these skills and I want to work more on these.
Thanks, Janna. What I love about this panel is it's not just talking about, well, what are the problems, what are the issues. Everyone on this panel is actually doing something to work, help solve them. So that's a great segue to you, Olivier. Can you tell us a little bit about the Assistive Tech and AI initiative that you helped launch at the forum?
What is really interesting, in my very biased way, but hey, full disclosure, absence of bias, objectivity, neutrality, independence, and transparency don't exist. So don't expect me to be unbiased. Is the fact that we still rely on very low tech to drive most of the decisions of governments and corporations. Seriously, what kind of research have you quoted until now? Surveys. There is 40 years of literature, 40 plus years of literature showing that declarative data is unreliable. In the age of AI, pen and pencil, microphones, recordings, etc., do a lot more damage than any AI system so far. I'm not talking about the future, but up to now. Because when you ask people questions, they can lie, or they don't have access to the mental processes that justify why they make a decision. Yet, there is not a single government, a single organization that doesn't run surveys. And the biggest problem, and this is part of exclusion too, is the fact that when you're being hired still today by a lot of big corporations, big organizations, what do you have to pass? Cognitive and personality tests. Like, a bunch of questions are going to summarize who I am and my experience. The worst part is, even if those tests were accurate and have predictable or predictivity in them, what is being measured at best is how I am in the moment. Less and less so people spend 10 years in a company. Okay. Yet, the score that I'm assigned when I join the company will determine how I'm going to be seen by HR for the rest of my career in that company. If I'm lucky enough to have been cut from even being interviewed because some psychologist said I'm not the right person. Of course, no one is monitoring the psychologist that is interpreting the result, whether that person had a breakup the night before or didn't sleep. All these factors. What AI can bring is not objectivity. Is to try to find the common patterns that allow for reproducible information and insights. What we want to do with this initiative is leverage assistive technologies, be them your computer adapting to you when you're at work. You are speaking about the future of work. Let's talk about the present of work. I might have very different attention capacities compared to all of you. Maybe I have less attention. Am I worse? Nah, but I'm expected, if I'm a knowledge worker, to sit in front of a computer from 9 to 12 and to take a break, to go to lunch, and then come back. But maybe I just need 5-minute break every 40 minutes, which actually behavioral and brain sciences have shown. If I'm given those 5 minutes, because I'm different, I can recharge and come back and being productive, but productivity is not enough. I can also feel better. It's better for me, it's better for the organization. Adaptive mechanisms, being able to understand and adapt to everyone. This is at the core of what we do. But it spans a lot of things. Material science, with my friend Susie Rogers, who is a Paralympic champion. She identified a very interesting problem. She's an amputee. She's wearing prosthetics. And guess what? I can't know that because I'm lucky enough to have both my legs. But there is a hitting problem when you're using a prosthetic. And thanks to AI, she has been starting to work on cooling mechanisms. My friend Mark Pollock, who is not only blind, but also paralyzed from the waist down, has been able to do a voluntary movement against all predictions thanks to some system that is communicating with his spine. And finally, my friend Rodrigo Ubna Mendez, paralyzed from the neck down, has been able, with the technology of my previous company, to drive a Formula One only with the power of his mind and to challenge Lewis Hamilton. These are the kinds of projects that if we do not have the support of a community of people, of an organization like the World Economic Forum, and again, full disclosure, I'm a former employee, I'm a young global leader of a forum, but thanks to the multi-stakeholder approach, we are able to support financially and beyond projects that not a lot of people would support otherwise.
Thank you. So, Kay, Olivier touched on some of the issues in the workplace. You have often talked about the need for the diversity, equity, inclusion policies to be adapted to the world of AI. Can you tell us about why?
Yeah, so it's sort of obvious, I would say. It's obvious why you do that. And one of them is that you are going to have better business. So, you know, if I'm sitting on the board or in the C-suite, then actually I am going to have a better business if I apply these. And when we think about it from the AI's perspective, actually we are going to think about creating diverse teams around the very first idea that we have for creating a product. And if you think about product creation, then you have diverse teams. Then you want to say, okay, so I want to create this product for this old white woman, gay, and what do I need? I don't need that to be created by guys under 30, which are generally the people who develop AI, because they won't understand what it is that I need. So you need a diverse team right from the beginning. You need a diverse team to take you through, and then you're creating a better product. You are also improving the way that your company works in all the ways that Olivier has been talking about as well. And so it's a sort of win-win thing for businesses.
Okay, thanks. Olivier, just a follow-up question. You very articulately described how technology can help people with physical limitations. But what about bias and discrimination? Do you think AI can help with that as well?
I think it can. As a behavioral and brain scientist, again, biases are here. They're just like the gravitational force. You can deny them, but at the end of the day, if you jump off a cliff, gravity will remind itself to you. The bias it's the same. The only problem is it's quite easy to remove a bias, but generally there are two others that appear. This is a rule. So you have to play judo with bias. You have to be able to understand the strength of a bias and use it in order to counter another. It's very much really about judo. The goal of having unbiased algorithms makes zero sense from a realistic point of view. Guess what? Okay, ChatGPT is biased and ChatGPT is not telling the truth. Whoa! Programmed by humans, trained on human data, used by humans, learning by humans. What do you expect? This is who we are. First, you know, before we criticize technology, let's admit who we are. We are full of failures, of limitations, and the product of our brains has some of its limitations. Yet, there is historically this ideal that if we create a technology, whatever the technology, will be better than us. And I guess this is why people expect AI to be unbiased. However, the fact that people now finally, and I've done that for an HR tech company, not only develop their main algorithms, but some safeguard algorithms that identify the bias and correct the main model by training the model, teaching the model what was wrong is important. Because so far, in this crazy race where a lot of people are trying just to put the AI label on their IP, they're just developing the main model to answer one task without thinking of the unintended consequences. And again, guess what? AI, just like any technology in the history of mankind, will and already has unintended consequences.
Yes.
And maybe
Good
I
and
could
bad.
just follow that up with an example of a company that I sit on a board of a company in the Far East. And, you know, one of the things that they've been doing is saying, oh, we want to use responsible AI, and we're in our loan department. So they were doing that, and they found one set of biases, which was who they loaned to, which then enables them to correct those biases, which then enabled a completely different sector of unbanked people to get loans.
Super interesting. Thank you, Kay. And Janna, you know, since we're on this theme of biases, what unique strategies or approaches is Mia using to help overcome bias and help women get placed in AI? And can you share maybe some examples?
Absolutely. So we have a learning network. We have now more than 1,000 women learning AI daily for free for more than 70 countries. So first of all, we want to make all women feeling that they belong, and I belong here, and this is my place where I can learn together with other non-technical women like me. We empower each other. We make education really accessible. We do fun, gamified challenges and all the fun stuff, really, to encourage women to start learning and simply start from somewhere, because that's all you need. And then speaking of like what the employers are looking at, so yes, we might have not all the answers or all the skills and whatsoever, but what is really moving the needle is that if you are continuously willing to learn and you are able to showcase this on your CV or showcase your new skills and your credentials, like I'm learning. So we have testimonials that this has really moved the needle and women are getting new jobs just for the fact that they are showcasing that I'm open to learn and I'm continuously learning. So those continuous learning and yeah.
Okay, thanks, Sneha. So what do we do to ensure this broad participation? Do you think local advocacy can help? Why is grassroots action especially crucial at this stage of AI? And then how might your organization bring this to the Global South?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that at this point in the AI governance conversation, it's clear that we need bold and swift action from lawmakers. And the issue and the reason why we're not seeing that take place at the speed we would like is because there isn't enough public sort of mobilization around the issue. And because of that, lawmakers don't feel that pressure, that impetus to act. And so I think it's really important that we start by peeling back any jargon surrounding AI discourse. Again, these conversations have typically been reserved for academics, cloistered away in Silicon Valley or in DC or elsewhere. And because of that, it's relatively inaccessible for the general public. So I think we have to start by peeling back jargon and encouraging people who don't have technical backgrounds to weigh in the conversation. I think we also have to make this feel like it is proximate to people's lived realities. One example or sort of one illustration that I always use is, AI literally surrounds us everywhere. I mean, if we're applying for a job, for example, there are algorithms that are reviewing our resume or, even recommending certain jobs that we should apply for. If we stand trial, there are algorithms that are evaluating our level of flight risk as a defendant or how likely we are to reoffend or commit another crime. If we are roaming around a public place, there could be AI-powered facial recognition cameras that are able to monitor our surroundings and identify us potentially. And so I think it's really important to make that so clear to people that AI has literally infiltrated every zone of public life. There obviously are, great things that can amount from that, but there are immense risks as well. And I think that once people begin to realize, wow, this isn't some abstract thing that is completely detached from the world that I'm experiencing, but it's actually part of the world I navigate every day, people will feel that will to take part and get involved. And so I think you mentioned, why grassroots action is critical and how we might bring that to the Global South. And I can speak a bit on what my organization, Encode Justice, is doing. As I mentioned, a lot of AI policy organizations have a centralized headquarters in Silicon Valley or DC or maybe London or Brussels. But there are as many organizations that take on the approach that we do. At Encode Justice, we actually have a grassroots chapter network, and we empower young people around the world to take action on local legislation, to host workshops in their immediate communities, to take part in local demonstrations and rallies, and kind of make this much more of a grassroots global effort. Again, given that we need lawmakers to feel that urgency to act. And so I definitely urge more organizations working on AI and working on AI public awareness and mobilization to consider that grassroots approach and consider what steps they might take to empower advocacy efforts on the ground, because that truly will be our key to getting the public fired up and thinking about AI.
Thank you. So we're getting near the end of our panel. I'm going to turn to you, Kay. You've spent a decade now working on responsible AI. What are your hopes for AI and inclusion in the next 5 years?
Okay, so first of all, education and healthcare, obviously being able to have AI in both of those sectors but responsibly, with good governance. And also, I sit on the board of Earth Species, the Earth Species Project. We're using AI to see whether we can find out what whales say to one another. And so I think really, when we're talking about inclusion, we shouldn't just be thinking about human species. We should also be thinking about non-human species. So that's something I want to see for the rest of the next 5 years as well.
Super interesting. So now I'd like to ask the other panelists to say, what is your call to action? What would you like to see? What would you like to encourage the people in this room to do to make your vision of the future, a positive future, a reality?
Thank you. For the non-technical individuals, start learning today. And for the employers, really put a focus on skills rather than traditional degrees when you're hiring. And then also for the employers, so really invest in upskilling your non-technical talent, because they will be so much more productive, and include them in your AI practices in the future.
Okay, and Sneha, do you want to just add to your call to action on advocacy about what you'd like to see?
Yeah, I think it sort of echoes the sentiment that you just mentioned, Janna. But I think making sure that we're including young people on oversight and advisory boards, whether that's in the private sector or in the public sector, making sure that entities like the World Economic Forum are engaging young people, but also companies that are looking to have boards and government agencies and such. It's really important to have young people involved in that process.
Thanks. Olivier, you have the last word.
Including young people. Yeah. Second, taking into account how we really function as humans. Workshops, speeches don't work. They are necessary, education is necessary, but not enough. If it were the case, no physician would be smoking today. Okay? Let's really understand and use how humans function. And my hope is we stop talking about AI and we focus on outcomes. Outcomes. I don't do AI. I do brain-machine interfaces that empower people who are excluded from the workplace and from education to have access to education and the workforce. Outcomes matter more than the methodology, as long as the methodology is legal, responsible, inclusive, fair, and it doesn't harm.
Thank you, Olivier. Do we have time for questions?
I don't. One or two? One to two.
Okay, this gentleman here.
So I hope you hear me. So totally agree that languages are a barrier. Wow, how painful are the disabilities when they segregate us. Gender inequality, instead of decreasing or being eliminated, I understand there is a risk of increasing. Totally agree. But I challenge you to go even deeper. Take me, for example. I'm a Caucasian, white male, speaking English.
To some of us, man.
Okay.
We can survive, I think.
Yeah. So I would be the one to be perceived as, okay, I'm included, but I don't feel included. And take healthcare. My personal data, my health data is not included. And how can individuals be included, not only taking into consideration different kind of cohorts, but going even deeper to the most personal level?
One word on that. You and I are very different, but very similar in that group. Our data is very much used. Most of the medical treatments are developed for people like you and I, and not the rest of the world. Still today. Still today. That was just the observation I wanted to make.
Hey, you want to grab that?
Only that I was going to say exactly the same as Olivier, except that if you're having a heart attack and you are over 55 and white male in the United States, your outcomes are better than being a white male anywhere else.
Okay, thanks. This woman has a question.
So I work in Silicon Valley, and I'm the only woman in a very large pool of male executives. And it can be hard to incentivize them to actually work towards inclusivity, not only inside the company, but also towards our clientele. So are there resources, data, partners that I can use to maybe incentivize them?
Janna, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so you would be, I think, better to answer this.
Yes, there are lots of resources that we created at the World Economic Forum to help incentivize them. I think it's just good business practice nowadays, and you can just sort of translate anything that we did on diversity and inclusion into the AI world, as I said earlier. But I think it's also around getting the C-suite. You know, one of the things I say about AI governance is that the board needs to be alert to it, and it's a team sport for the whole C-suite. You can't do this with one person. You can't do this with the human resources officer trying. So I think engaging those people, and also then, you know, within the company. At the forum, we put together a group of, you know, all women, so that we could come together and talk about best practices for women, and then that spread out through the forum, and we had allies. Same for other groups. So yes, all through the organisation, but getting the C-suite and the board on board is most important.
So with that, I want to wrap up the panel, and I think, you know, the key takeaway here is that we need AI to represent all of us. And as the people on the panel showed, through the very concrete things they are doing, that it is possible to avoid AI defining us, and because the people on this panel and everyone in the room were defining the future of AI. So with that, let's have a nice round of applause for our panelists.